let's start with where you're from, where you grew up, and let's do a not too granular story because obviously we can get bogged down in a lot of details.
Yeah, no one cares.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but you've lived a pretty prolific life, so
Well,
it's a long story, right?
It's a very long story.
It's a long story.
That ends here with you. So I was born in
Right
North
before
Dakota.
the murder.
Turn off the cameras. I was born.
Keep rolling. Keep rolling.
I was born in North Dakota, and I only lived there probably like my first 5 years of life.
Only person still that I've ever met.
A lot of people in Texas, they're constantly like, I've never met anyone from North Dakota. No. I don't know why.
Maybe it's like a, similar to like the land of entrapment thing that we know about, with New Mexico, where it's like there's just like so few people actually make it out alive.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I feel, so I moved 15 times in 12 years. That was just schools. I went to 15 schools in 12 years. And then I went to Seattle and then Hawaii and then came here. I really feel like anyone I talk to at any given moment, I've lived somewhere they've lived.
Yeah.
But I haven't hit the East Coast. Anyway, I was raised.
You've hit it enough to know what it is and that, it's too cold.
It's super cold.
Yeah.
I feel like I could sum up my life right here with this queso. Because
I'm so excited for this analogy. Bring it on.
I really thought that my mom invented queso.
Oh, that's right. God.
I did. And it wasn't, and it was the highlight of like, when I was living with her and my friends always wanted to stay with my mom and at her house. She was the cool mom. And she would make us queso. And I knew what it was made of, but I feel like she even told me that she invented the recipe. Like it was her recipe.
Well, sure.
And it wasn't until I was in my 20s, and I have a long history of my mother being not the perfect mother. She was not Betty Crocker. She was.
Sure.
What was the movie?
Also, the insinuation that Betty Crocker was the perfect mother.
I don't know.
I
don't know why I just went with her. I think
she's actually just responsible for a lot of diabetes.
And a really nice like gingham cookbook, the red plaid like.
Which about 5 years ago got wildly overused in the restaurant business.
Surprising I didn't reference Martha Stewart because she's like my dream.
Yeah. Really nice lady, by the way. I met her in Miami. We were standing in the same line at the spa.
Is this pre-prison or post?
Post.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I was there with my ex-wife. And we were just hanging out in line at the Fountain Blue, going to the spa.
As you do.
And we're taking a picture, doing the whole selfie thing. And then this lady turns around and is like, hey, want me to take a picture of you? And it's fucking Martha Stewart.
I would die. But not us, you and me.
Yeah.
Are you single?
And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Roll up my tongue. Yeah.
What are the chances?
So nice.
I love that story. Damn it, that's good.
Anyhow, continue.
My mother wasn't the no wires hanger mother, but maybe it could have been a little bit of no wire hangers. Anyway, it wasn't until my 20s, I don't know, I was in Hawaii, probably having a mom moment where I was like, oh, I'm going to do for my kids what my mom did for me and make queso.
Yeah.
And grab the Velveeta and grab the Rotel and then saw on the back of the Rotel the recipe.
For queso.
Yes. And in the store, in that Safeway on Hono'opi'ilani Highway, I was like, oh.
That's a fucking sad moment.
Oh, I was crushed. I was like, of all the lies and all of the damage you've ever done, this is it.
This is it.
This is the final straw for me. So this could have summed it up for me. I never eat queso.
Rough order on my part.
I actually, shortly thereafter, was like, I'm lactose intolerant. It's so funny. I'm putting this all together now. Yeah. I didn't touch dairy for 15 years.
Yeah.
Was it subconscious? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm trying this now, and it's quite delicious.
You're entirely intolerant of the experience of queso. That's for fucking sure.
It's a traumatic thing. Do you think they use Velveeta in this?
It's probably off-brand, I would imagine.
But that's the thing, right? Is that's the kind of cheese people use? Mm.
Yeah, 100%. So it started in North Dakota, and then New Mexico.
Arizona, actually.
New Mexico.
Colorado.
Back to New Mexico? A little back and forth there?
There was some back and forth between Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, back up to North Dakota, back down to Colorado.
God bless.
Back up to Montana, back down to Colorado, then New Mexico.
What a weird set of like kind of humanless places to have shaped your early existence, you know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And when I think back to when I was younger, I was a complete tomboy.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be outside.
I find that so interesting because you're so effeminate now.
And you haven't even heard the news yet. I was referred to as Sir this weekend.
Stop.
I was. And it was actually really funny.
What
but
kind
also,
of men
like,
are walking around with tits like that?
Unfortunately, I was in my linen overalls, which don't do much for my shape, but I was sitting down also, and I really felt like this has to be the most interesting moment.
Also, what man wears linen overalls?
They're so nice looking. I don't know if it was location, environment, shaved head, just a quick glance. My dad does like to make it clear that I do look very much like a man right now. I was like, even with my mascara, that's cool. I wasn't offended, but I definitely was like, yeah, probably. I probably do. I know my features, so whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you have strong features, but I mean, that's neither here nor, I don't know.
Well, it played well into I was definitely like a complete tomboy growing up. And I wanted to hang out with my brother and his friends. He was 5 years older. I wanted to run around and play with them and try to keep up. And he didn't want me around, of course. But we were just like a bunch of little hooligans running the streets. I was climbing trees. I was trying to jump out of trees to break my leg. I really wanted to cast.
You really wanted to cast?
I wanted to cast. I wanted attention. I was the girl in line at school when they were like checking for scoliosis. I was like, say me, say me, say me. I think it's because like you would get attention then at home. They're like, oh, you're not well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was like go outside.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was sort of my thing. That was like play with the boys, be with the boys, and I don't think I really realized later like that transition of, I don't know. I think I might have been a part of a Me Too movement before I even realized. I was like, what do I have to do to be in the club? Oh, I'll just lift my shirt.
Yeah.
Cool, bro.
Cool. Great.
Like I was like 7.
Yeah.
What's it gonna take? Didn't really understand. And
That's
then
funny.
And then I think also always just kind of want to be like one of the guys and hang out with the guys. As I grew up and became more feminine looking, I didn't really catch on to what that transition was sort of like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you feel like your like external sexual identity became something that you had to reckon with on a daily basis?
Oh, my 30s.
Oh, interesting. Huh. What? That's surprising to me.
I've never seen myself that way. I never looked at myself and thought attractive, pretty, sexual.
Certainly the world has, though.
I've heard it a lot, but I've never understood it.
Okay.
And I also know that I think, there was just this, I didn't understand it. I just wanted to hang out and be normal and hang out with the guys.
Yeah.
And I remember also like my body wasn't like the other girls. I was pretty skinny and my legs, the tops of my thighs didn't touch. And I would just stand at the pool and be so embarrassed, thinking like, I just want my thighs to like come together at the top.
Little did you know that.
Well, now they like clap when I sit down. And I'm like, I got it. You're here together. Good news.
Table for two.
Yeah, totally. But it was all of that. Like I was like praying for my period.
Yeah.
I wanted to like have some of those feminine things at one point. So that was maybe when I started to cue in like, I do want to look like the other girls. I want to kind of be a part of that.
Yeah.
But I didn't sexualize or feel sexy or even consider being that way until probably in my 30s.
Okay. So how would you feel like if you were to like distill down some of the ways that your, I guess, formative years shaped like the essence of you as you view yourself, right? As a human being, as a mother, as a professional, right? What would those things be in your estimation?
I have, becoming a mother as young as I did, that quickly shaped who I decided I would be. I was a partier in high school, and I really didn't have an idea of what direction I was going to go. And getting pregnant was like an immediate, you're gonna get your shit together. You're gonna do this. You're gonna be a mother, and I had this idea of what I thought a mother would be like, which was based on what I didn't have.
So just like it's opposite day every day.
Yeah. And then that was like, okay, so if you're going to be a mother and you're home with your kids, how do you also make money? I had a partner at the time who was like, you're gonna need to work as well.
Yeah.
And it was just this collaboration of ideas. He was in real estate,
Yeah.
or he was a home builder. So it was like, well, maybe
So you-
try real estate.
Yeah.
So my life like started shaping up from this point of I'm 20 and I'm going to be a mother.
Yeah.
What would a mother be like?
Yeah.
And you're marrying a 40-year-old man. I was basically 45 at 20. I had mortgages. I was wearing Tommy Bahama, selling real estate.
The Tommy Bahama part, wearing a 20-year-old woman wearing Tommy Bahama is.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of any woman.
I know. I had my tongue was pierced, and I just remember thinking like mothers don't have tongue rings.
Yeah.
And I took it out. Like it just completely shifted. It was a 180 from whatever I thought I was.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what drove my direction.
Interesting.
And throughout real estate and having kids, I realized also like, okay, this isn't really my calling. I wasn't ever satisfied with it. And I always had this like pull to create and do more.
Yeah.
And I was constantly coming up with like different business ideas, and they had catchy little names and marketing ideas. And I realized like in my mid-20s, oh, I want to be able to like market.
Yeah.
I want to do that. But didn't have at the time.
You wanted to exist in between the space of idea and having that idea connect to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was at one point thinking I would love to be able to sit in the room when they're coming up with the advertising and the branding and all that marketing, and that's maybe something I would want to do, but it just wasn't possible. Living in Hawaii, at least for me in my mind, it was like that's not an option. So creating businesses
that you could do that for.
That I could do for myself.
Sure.
Yeah, was sort of like, I had like an island, I had a business called Island Bliss, and it was a corporate spa parties. I had invented a running skirt.
Interesting.
I was convinced that, and at the time I had never seen one, and I took like beach swim skirts.
They're oddly popular now.
Super popular.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I know you did that. You
Yeah.
did that about 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The Epicurious.
They're not for me, but they are for Westlake.
Yeah, and they were definitely for me in my early 20s running
just so
on Maui.
odd. Like you were like this conservative mom
Yeah,
30 years early.
yeah.
It's really weird.
I've become
Especially considering who you are now.
That's what's been really interesting is
Yeah.
I don't want to say I've been regressing or on a descent.
No, it's the opposite.
I think when I found out I was a mother, I was like, you have to be this person.
Yeah,
and you have
totally.
to look and be a certain way. And as they've gotten older, I've been able to discover who I am as well.
Well, and I think that comes with, discovering the world when you go from, a certain portion of America to Hawaii. While all those areas that you lived in are physically beautiful, they lack culture.
Yeah, but
And so,
I don't think it was even about culture. It was this mindset that I had that moms shouldn't look and be a certain
Oh, sure.
way,
Yeah,
right? Like
totally.
I presented myself with that, and that's certainly not true, and that's obvious
No.
now. Like I did roll into their school one year with a septum piercing. Actually, no, I picked them up at camp, and I had pierced my septum, and I'd shown up and picked them up at camp before with tattoos, and that was fine. But the septum piercing was actually something they were like, "Can you not have that?"
so how do you reconcile the existence? And I think it's more interesting now than it ever has been, between being a mom, being a single person, and dating and having an online existence, both business and professional, right?
Yeah.
And then maintaining boundaries so
Yeah.
that every section of that life is somewhat compartmentalized and doesn't infringe on itself, because I'm sure, your kids being comfortable and not being like, I can't believe my mom said this, is something that, is...
Where we are now is a very different place than where we started. Much like
Sure.
how conservative I used to be. I loosened up as the years went on. And there was a time where I had a lingerie store and sold sex toys, and no shame in that, but I also didn't want my kids I didn't want to sit down and be like, this is what that is.
Yeah,
So
totally.
though they were around it and they saw pictures of women, like Nick saw women in lingerie every day on the walls, and it didn't faze them. And I thought the more you normalize it, the better.
Sure.
And the more that I confronted other people's opinions about it, the more that I was like, I don't want my kids to grow up thinking that way and to have to, so I started to loosen up the more I faced other people's like pushback.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then I think what's been interesting about it mostly is just to watch how at one point Nick was very embarrassed where he was like, can you not tell people at school, when he was in middle school, he's like, please don't tell them what you do.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I can respect that. You don't want to know I have a lingerie store. What would you like for them to know that I do or think? And he's like, can you just tell them that you're in marketing? And I said, sure, because I do that.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to do that. But the school was calling me in to do like little Shark Tank presentations for classrooms and be on a panel and help participate in things. And he's like, and the school also was like, we don't want to say you have a lingerie store.
Yeah.
How do we, how do we color this?
Yeah.
And I get that.
Yeah.
But I think I also got tired of it. And it was just more of this, I just want to be me. And what does that look like? While also respecting that I have kids and those boundaries and not embarrassing them. And that's been a really fun thing to explore because as they get older, they've opened their minds as well.
Yeah.
Which has helped me open up a little bit. And it's just been like this little give and take. You know, now Faith is asking for her septum piercing. And I, of course, bring it back every time. I'm like, that's so funny. That's so funny you would want that.
Yeah.
Because you told me I couldn't. Now I want to tell you no.
So what's your stance there?
As you know, with my kids, I only say no when it's a hard no.
Yeah.
She has her nostril pierced right now, and I personally feel like that's a bit much.
Yeah,
to
you
have
for sure have to
both.
choose one.
I feel like one is enough.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, then you're just going to look like homegirl in Pulp Fiction, and just like people will be referring you by, the girl with all the shit in her face.
But I've been the girl. I was the girl in high school who had the tongue ring and the lip ring and the nipple rings and the belly rings and all the things.
But only 2 of those things are in your face, to be clear.
Right, and only one you could actually see at any given moment.
Not 2 in your nose.
Yeah. It's not uncommon, though, to see it. So I try to take my prejudices out of it.
Good, that's big of you.
And give her time to like really think about it. It's
Yeah.
the same with tattoos. Nick's asking about tattoos, and we've always been really clear on you have to think about them for like 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
And some of them I'm telling them they have to think about longer, just out of experience.
That's a really good rule.
It used to be when you're out of college and you're paying your own bills, you can talk to me about tattoos.
Yeah,
But
totally.
there's just no way. There's
Yeah.
no way in this day and age that like I could keep pushing that.
Totally.
Not because I'm covered in them, but they're going to go and do it. So
Yeah.
for me, it's just been about
Let's take some time.
respecting their wishes. And then also like, again, if I just keep saying no and they go and do it and then they do something really dumb and they're going to
Totally.
regret, as opposed to kind of like, what is it? Helping kind of guide them through.
Yeah, navigate their way through. Yeah.
But the marketing, the marketing part right now for them, because I speak so openly and honestly about things that I've been through, what they don't want is necessarily me talking about what they're going through. So we have
Sure.
some very hard lines and boundaries around what I talk about in regards to mothering and parenting and what they're going through.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you guys actually like have gotten there and
Oh, yeah.
navigated that. That's,
Well, I've made a mistake before where
Sure.
I've vented on a story about something and,
Yeah.
and Faith, was mortified.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't actually consider that and I apologize. So let's talk about this now and
Yeah.
and what that looks like. And there's been times where she's come back and she said, you can talk about that if you want.
yeah.
I think people think I'm a completely open book about everything, and there's a lot that goes on in our lives that we don't discuss.
That's so cool that there is like an ongoing back and forth about what is and isn't shareable. Because I mean, when part of your identity is communicating your private life, I mean, publicly and sharing experiences
Yeah.
and sharing learning and sharing moments.
Yeah.
The fact that you guys have that is really special. That's really cool.
Yeah, and
it takes a lot of maturity on everybody's part.
On everyone's part.
Yeah.
Well, you have to tread that line because when we don't want to talk about our past or our experiences, sometimes it's because there's shame there.
Sure.
And then other times it's because you're just still in the process. So
Yeah.
I try to navigate that with them, like, where are you in this?
Yeah.
And
are we
and then
feeling?
also, how can I go through my experience while you're going through yours, and not, I'm not here to objectify yours, but
Yeah.
this is what I do and what I have going on.
Totally.
So that part, yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, God, it's not as if we're like the Kardashians or something, but you would think that they think that. They absolutely, like, because people know them in Austin or will see them or know
Yeah.
me, so they're like, you've actually made a name here for yourself.
Yeah.
And I've made that really clear also, like, as I've gotten older with media and marketing and who they are out in the town and representing themselves, that they represent me
Yeah.
as well as, like, how I've raised them and who they are,
Yeah.
and they need to be mindful of who I am and
Yeah.
how they show up on my part.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a really cool thing to be transparent about.
I know. You would think, like I said, it's like as if I really think I'm somebody. I'm not. I just want my kids to be really mindful of how
their
they show
behavior
up.
affects others. Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So getting back to business.
Yes.
Something that, I think is, very apparent is, I think that, you and I have had this discussion, offline a lot of times, but I'm curious where you stand on it today, is what makes you completely uninterested in being an employee? Because I think, throughout your whole journey, there's been a certain, you work on your terms, right? Like whatever the industry is, whatever you develop, whatever your process is, it's like, okay, I'm going to create this thing, and this thing is going to be an expression of me, right?
Yeah.
And however it operates will be on my terms, right? And so what about, because there is a certain like security that comes with being an employee and with having set hours and set income and all those things that, sometimes when they're taken out of your control, you can have a lot less perceived, immediate stress in life, although inherently probably a lower ceiling of, the variability of those things, right? So what about that to you has never made you say, okay, that's something that, that attracts me, or something I'm going to at least like dip my toe into a little bit?
For me, it's always seemed very limiting and controlling. I look back at school, I was just in so much pain sitting at the desk in a small room for those hours. Like it was a real struggle for my sanity. I really hated it. So it was very natural when I got out of school to think like, what can I do? I'm willing to go to college. I'll look at that. I wanted to, but when I had an opportunity to not and go sit in a classroom, I was like, yeah, if there's a way around that, then that's for me. And the few times that I have tried working for people, I've come away thinking I work really well with others, but not for others. I can't seem to, it's very counterintuitive to me.
I took a lot longer to figure that out than you did, but I think that if you can drive the spirit of collaboration and do it on your own terms, right, then that's something that's really fulfilling, right?
Yeah.
If you're having your feet held to the fire in the spirit of collaboration, it's a different experience entirely, right?
Well, and there was this time where I was like, oh, I'm going to work for Starwood. I'm going to be a concierge. And it was actually a marketing job to get people to go on timeshare tours. And I felt like such a fraud. Yeah. And there's all these meetings. And there was all, like, you had to do all this stuff all the time. And then you might not even get paid if you didn't have so many. It was just such a lie to me. Yeah. And a waste of my time. And I felt like it was a waste of everybody's time. Like, how many meetings do we need to really go to be productive? Yeah. And I still look at that now, and I'm getting better about it. Because as an entrepreneur or someone who's worked for herself, there are certainly things that I've not known how to do. Yeah. And there was a time where I believed, the more hours you work and the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. And that was very counterintuitive for me, to like try to keep up with this pace that everybody else is on. And now the more that I sit and wait and really take my time, the more productive I am. And more successful I've been. It's
so crazy.
Yeah, it's really wild because running a store for 10 years was something that beat me down pretty hardcore. And now coming out of that, I swear I wouldn't work like that again. Yeah. And so just changing it, and it's again because society would tell you have to work these many hours and you have to be at this pace and you have to do this and that in the meetings, and I'm like, it actually doesn't work for me. No, I don't thrive in that setting at all. Even as an entrepreneur, I just don't. And if I have people working for me or with me, it just can't be that way. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. I think there are times when like work is going to have to increase for whatever reason or another. But by the same token, like there's an inherent inefficiency that you get by saying, I'm going to first tire myself out and then expect increased productivity at the same time. Right? It's like it's at best briefly sustainable.
Yeah, totally. I think what's really important in the beginning stages, you do have to work really hard to get your processes set in place, your systems. And that's, the foundation of any good business. So key. And those are things I did not do with Teddy's for Betty's.
Yeah. Well, I've actually seen you do that with your life coaching more, which is to say, like, Well, actually, let's talk about that, right? What was that transition like? And so you quit Teddy's for Betty's, you stopped doing that. And then what was a period of time where you're like, okay, cool, this chapter is closed. And what was a period of time like, okay, I'm going to take X amount of time from like that to, okay, I'm inspired to do this next thing. What was that process like?
It actually started while the store was still open.
Oh, so.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't going to, we at one point I had investors and we were talking about 3 to 5 stores across the nation. And we had gotten ourselves into a lease up at the domain. And then investors were like, don't want to do this. And I was raising other capital and they would only sign off on it. It just became this shit show. And I was doing all the things that I did not enjoy about having a business, like raising money, talking to investors, sitting at meetings, all of this. And I was like, for what? Yeah. And I just knew at that point, I was like, this actually isn't going to work. The numbers aren't working. The rents are increasing. Yeah. It is not happening. And there's no way that I'm going to be able to have 5 stores across the nation and like represent that in a way that will be successful. Yeah. So as I mourned the loss of my business in front of me, knowing that I had a staff that I needed to keep on and I was paying them and not me. Yeah. But couldn't fathom shutting down at that time and calling it because I felt like they needed me. Yeah. So I spent probably 2 years. Oh my God. Trying to keep it all together. Yeah. And went through with the lease at the other store and had to get down to the bare, like, what is it that you enjoy about this? Because there was a moment I was like, oh my God, what are you going to do without this? Like your entire identity is wrapped up in this store and this is what you're known for. And if it's not this, then who are you? Yeah. And it was depressing and it was scary. And I had to get really clear and honest with myself, like, what are you good at? Yeah. This has not all been for naught. Like, there are things here that you've done well with. And it was the conversations in the dressing room. So incredible, that connection. I knew I was really good at connecting with people. My openness, vulnerability, people have felt inclined to just share with me. Marketing was always a great thing. And there were a handful of other things. And so I just started thinking about those while going to my store and still like trying to, can I keep it going? What if I do this? I was like, what if I have a podcast and I start hosting workshops at Teddy's for Betty's and there are these sex positive workshops and there's a podcast with conversations. And I was like, that's a pivot. Yeah. Maybe we can keep it all going that way. Yeah. And then it just became more obvious, the store part. It was like, you can't keep holding on. Yeah. And letting go of it was the final surrender. And when I knew I was letting go, I was like, I want to cheer on people. I want to like be an accountability person. I'm really good at that. And then it was just like, I want to be a life coach. Like it just kind of all came together that way. And that still took, so I started taking classes. I looked for different schools, signed up while I was at the store. And I was going through training and doing it all at the same time. And it just organically ended up, I think almost a year into coach training, I was like, it's done. And I decided one day, I was actually in Oregon randomly. Yeah. And I decided when I get home, I'm calling it. And I made an announcement on Instagram. I was like, doors close in 30 days. You have 25 to shop. And we're done. And people came out in droves. They did. Yeah. And it was actually the first time on social media that I decided to start really calling out customers for who they were all those years. And that was a ton of fun because people are dicks in retail stores. Yeah, totally. And I had really kept my mouth quiet about it. And I was like, we're not doing that anymore. Yeah. I'm going out with a bang. Love it. Yeah. But what I didn't realize when I closed it all down, even though I had a plan and I knew what I was going to do, one part of you just kind of thinks like, that's just going to start up. It's going to be great. It's not gonna, there's not going to be any in between time because I've been preparing myself, and I fell into like a crazy depression. I mean, that's not entirely surprising given. I was floored by it. I still look back. It's when everybody went through the pandemic and having to stay home and be quarantined and not go to work, that crawling out of your skin feeling of my normal day to day is this and now it's not. Who am I? What am I doing? I did not expect any of that. I thought I would be so relieved. Yeah. And when my phone wasn't blowing up and I didn't have emails and I didn't have sales numbers defining my day, I was like, who are you? Yeah. Like, what are you even doing with your life? Yeah. And that took a good year. Yeah. A good year. And just kind of scraping to get clients because I couldn't quite that's when I was like, maybe I should work for somebody. Maybe I'm not equipped to run a business.
Yeah.
I just didn't have it in me.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting is that when you fundamentally say that, okay, this isn't the thing, right? In my experience, and it sounds like yours, you've already given so much to that there is this inherent recharge that needs to happen, and this like inherent healing that needs to happen from that is, I think it's something that we wildly underestimate.
I'm an accelerator.
No, but I mean, it's like push. Okay,
Yeah.
this is done. On to the next thing. When you realize that, the space between those two things needs to, that runway probably needs to be a lot longer than you would ever think.
Oh, for sure.
I think it's incredible that you had all that up and running and basically were, ready to immediately pivot. I can speak for myself saying that, almost 2 years after I stepped away from, my most, momentous work as an employee of someone else, I think I can finally say for the first time that I kind of have it figured out, right?
Yeah.
Which is to say, that my actions reflect my priorities, and that I'm doing what I love, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a hard place to get to.
It's super hard, and there's no amount of validation on the outside that's gonna get you there. I have people, they're just like, it's so amazing. You just like started a new business. Like you said you were going to do it and you're doing it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that sounds really nice.
It
doesn't
does.
feel like that.
Well, and like the nuts and bolts of, the only like finger you can point is right here. Is it's not easy all the time. It's also great, but it's not easy all the time.
I think if I were to say, like, there has the external validation that has really hit home. It has been the one from home, because the kids have seen. They witnessed me crying at the dinner table.
Yeah.
It was not pretty for a while there, and they know how. Like,
they know the work you've done.
Yeah, they've seen the work that I've done, and then I just decided I'm not going to lie to you guys and sugarcoat what's going on here. Like, this is a huge thing, and when you see your kids know what's going on, and you can try to lie,
that
pretend,
energy shift
and act.
is like,
but
it's
they're so intuitive and they're
100%
smart,
right.
and I'm like, I'm not going to lie to them.
Yeah.
This is really fucking hard right now, and I don't think it's going to make it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying, but I'm like barely hanging on.
Yeah.
This past year, Nick messaged me, and I think it was before the workshop I did with Kelly. He was like, Mom, you're like really doing the damn thing. Like, you said you were going to start this, and you're doing it all.
Doing it.
And to have that recognition because the people on the outside never saw what was going on the inside.
Sure.
People to this day still don't know that it's closed. And the people who do are like, it was just such an amazing story. I just don't understand why you closed it. And I'm like, that's really weird. You came in like once every 3 years and rents and, I appreciated your support, but like it takes so much to run a store in retail.
Also, if they had given you any support, you would have appreciated it more.
Or also you would have known I was closed. But for my kids to know, like, they knew what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so for them to like step back and be like, oh, you're actually doing it. That's
a really powerful thing as a child to parent.
I've been lucky with them.
Well, we make our own luck.
You're like, well, it is like this though.
Yeah. Let's talk about, because I think it's something that we share. And we talked about this the other day.
What is it?
Let's talk about being talked about.
Oh, yeah.
I think something that I've experienced, for sure more so in the past couple years. I think people inherently have, interest in whatever a single person is doing as opposed to whatever a married person's doing, as long as,
I want to know what all the married people are doing.
Do we?
Sure. Why not?
But I think there's this, you and I have both experienced, both people not close and very close to us. I don't want to say talking out of turn about our personal lives, but I think, talking in a way that very obviously is, revealing things that we never said was okay to reveal to third and fourth parties, right?
I was thinking about that. Well,
and so I'm curious how you have gone about navigating that, because I think it's something that you've been dealing with for a little bit longer than me. And something that, when I brought it up the other day, I was like, man, this shit's fucking with me right now. I'm feeling some serious resentment, and I don't like to live with that feeling, because I know that if I'm filled with resentment, it means a couple things, right? I probably need to look myself in the mirror and be like, okay, what am I doing that's actually making me feel this way? And then also, why am I going to be friendly with people that keep doing that? Right?
Yeah, and then I'm like, why is this really bothering me? Because if it's bothering me, then that means on some level I believe it.
That's a great point.
Right? So
that's a great
there's
point.
a lot of questions that can be asked about it. When I had an affair, my ex-cousin-in-law, I don't even know if that's a thing, she tweeted about it.
Oh, God.
And she actually does have a following, I will say. She has a massive following here. And she was like, the owner of Teddy's for Betty's will fuck your husband. Don't shop there. And the threads just
Love that family support, by the way.
Oh, man, it was beautiful. But this is what's great about people. So someone was like, oh my God.
I'm still waiting, by the way.
Someone said, oh my God, really? I never really liked her anyway. And then someone was like, this owner of that store, that's local? And then some guy was like, I've always thought she's really hot. Do you think she'd fuck me? It was like that. And it was that part. I was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. But really, I was dying. I was dying.
Yeah.
I was in my room on the floor, it's over. You're over.
I feel so lucky that when I went through all of that, it was in another state. And there was, because I can't imagine what my life, specifically at that point in my life, because there was a spotlight on me that is, about as bright as it's ever been. That, man.
Yeah, I was
like, God bless you.
I would go down to my store and the wife knew, and I just was like, is there going to be a rock in the window? Is she going to show up here? I fucked up.
Yeah.
I fucked up, and everybody got to hear about it, and I lived with that. I didn't talk about that for a long time, and other people were talking about it for sure. Every time I showed up at an event and that other woman was there, she would let everybody know. Yeah. And when I met someone,
I actually did experience that in a certain portion of my life. There was an element of it.
It made things for me. It just showed these are the consequences. This is what happens, and
totally.
You living.
Don't do a bunch of shit that you don't want a bunch of people knowing about.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and it also is, talk about humbling. I will never badmouth or talk shit about anybody having an affair or doing it. It's none of my business. Yeah. She had a great time letting people know. If she saw me in a picture with someone she knew, she would text them and be like, hey, I just want you to know.
God, that's fucking rough.
And I get it. I don't ever want to live that way. And full circle, 7 years later, she actually got caught having an affair. But the best part was I was so grateful to the universe. Somehow,
Hashtag gratitude.
This is amazing.
Hashtag Nashville strong.
I get this text from this. I saw one today, Waco strong. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Really? I got a text from this woman saying, is this your bracelet? Mm-hmm. And I was like, what's so weird? And earlier that day, the guy, the guy had messaged me. He's like, hey, I just, it's been a minute since we talked. Just want to get your advice on some stuff. And I thought, I didn't want to respond to him because I was like, I don't really want to talk to this person. He's kind of annoying. Yeah. And then I got this text about a bracelet, and the bells just went off. I was like, something's going on here. Yeah. So I messaged her back, hey, not my bracelet. I hope everything's okay. And she said, I'm so sorry. I got you mixed up with someone else. It was at my boyfriend's. And so I text the guy, and I'm like, looks like you're in some trouble. And then he tells me this girl was stalking me all over town and showed up at this place and just started making out with me. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. Who is she?
You got the juice.
Yeah, and he told me, because we share a name.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Did you just say so-and-so? And he said yes. And I was like, I want nothing to do with this. Yeah. She's hardcore. I want out. And he's like, she mentioned you. And then that's when I found out from the girlfriend. She messaged me and she said that the other Ashley had said, no, it wasn't me. It must have been Ashley Kelsch. You have the wrong Ashley. And it had been her. So she even tried to take her affair and
oh my fucking God.
I know. And I was so upset because I was like,
who passes the buck on an affair?
I was like, you're such a monster. But then
unbelievable.
I couldn't be upset about it. I was like, you know what, this. I'm just going to thank the universe, because like, what are the chances that I ever would have found this out? And I always swore, I was like, one day she's going to go through something.
Yeah.
She runs around town talking all this shit about me. One day she's going to go through something, or she's going to tell someone about my affair, and she's going to say it to the wrong person, someone who's probably had an affair, which is almost everybody.
Yeah.
And they're going to put her in her place. But instead it was, she tried to blame me for this affair, and it was her and her fiance found out, and the woman found, it was this whole thing.
Fucking mess.
Yeah, so, you know, that's a good example of people talking about you, and you're like, can you not?
Can you not?
Can you not?
Fuck. God bless. God fucking bless.
But I think oftentimes people are talking about me in a way that I'm like, wow, I'm living a way cooler life than, I mean, my life isn't what you think it is, but you guys talk about it in a way that makes it sound really interesting.
I mean, interesting is in the eye of a bored person, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
obviously,
that's
if you're
what it
sitting
comes
around
down
talking
to.
about other people, like that in itself, right there, is just very telling. But I understand what you mean when we have friends that, like we talked about the other day, I've had friends share my sex stories with other people, and that, you know, I've got to learn to maybe shut my mouth.
Yeah, it's interesting learning who you like. Those little boundaries in friendships are really interesting to me, because on the one hand, it doesn't devalidate the friendship. It just says like, hey, if I don't want 10 people knowing this one thing, here's a couple people that I definitely won't tell that one thing.
In my friend's defense, I share a lot of information. So, you know, like, it's not unheard of me to be on my podcast and be like, hey, I broke quarantine.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. No.
But there are some details.
On that note.
Yes.
On that
note. That's me announcing it.
Yeah.
I broke quarantine.
God bless.
Thanks.
Proud of you. Long overdue.
I know. And I my delayed podcast episodes, it would make it seem like I was hiding something, but I was like, oh, wait, this is in real time.
Yeah.
That happened.
So I think what's really interesting about how dating and sex and flirtation and courtship and all of that has evolved over the past, let's call it 3 months at this point, right?
Yeah.
Is to say that I think we were all very cautious at first, and there was just like, okay, like this consideration, which you and I talked at length about, of like, should you couple up with someone, you know, like what does that look like, you know, and
that's a big commitment, it turns out.
It's a big something.
Yeah.
And it is, and what I realized is that at least in Austin and in Texas, and I think in probably a lot of the country, that is starting to, you know, open up a little bit. I think people have gone from kind of masks and gloves at the grocery store to just full fuck it mode. And I think dating has oddly never been more dangerous, because I think people people have totally let their guards down. And I think you cannot, within a reasonable thing, assume anything about someone else's behavior at this point. I think we're like, I think it's like fucking Mad Max right now. Like there's just like a bunch of people out in the fucking desert just like fucking everybody and like stealing everybody's water to fucking survive.
Maybe give me the directions to your desert. I'm not seeing any of that.
Yeah.
And I
pretty
feel
great. There's Tom Hardy and fucking,
I'd get down out there. I'd get down. But I feel, the impression I'm getting, and I keep making this joke, is like the boomers and the zoomers.
The boomers and the zoomers, I like that.
Are kind of like, whatever. And we are sort of in the middle like, whoa, hey, is that safe? Should we not?
Yeah.
And even that, I'm actually realizing, I think there's just this, I think we want to say that we're concerned. I think we want to say we want to be safe and that we shouldn't be doing this or that, because we don't know all the facts and we don't know what to do and when is it going to end. But I also think we're all very human.
Totally agree.
And
I think here's the thing, right? I think that we can all say that we have human needs and a want to connect, and I think that's super valid. And I think, frankly, necessary to our happiness. I think what isn't valid is fucking 20-person boat party is just fucking pouring rosé all over fucking tits, you know?
what?
And that is like...
That's stuff I wouldn't have heard about before either. Like, that's just not my life at all.
But it's like this like
that sounds dangerous anyway.
Yeah. You know, and so I was talking, I mean, to someone else about this earlier, and it's really interesting to me how this, like, how health has somehow become political, you know, and it's like, it's this like politicized choice of, am I going to go out or not? How many people am I going to go out with or not? And am I going to wear a mask or not?
It's interesting to hear you say that, because as a woman, our reproductive health has been politicized for so long, right? So
the irony of all of it is nothing short of fucking tragic.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very sad joke. It's a very, very sad joke.
It's really interesting. Like we talked about before, I think people who want to have sex and date are going to go out and do that the way that they did before. I don't think that this pandemic or COVID situation is an ego shatterer. I think people are still very much like, they're like, oh, it's not going to get me. Yeah. And it likely won't. Yeah. Like if you're healthy and in that age range, maybe you'll get it, but it's not going to kill you. Yeah. You'll probably get an STI before you get it.
Sure.
Like, again, we've talked about this so many times. I'm still approaching dating the same way I was before, which is like, I don't feel like fucking around with everybody. So this is making it even harder to find maybe someone to spend time, because there's also just so many other question marks where you're like, oh, if I'm looking to date to meet somebody, and my plans were to meet somebody because my kids are graduating and maybe they're going to be going off to college, and now I have room in my life for that. Well, I don't even know if my kids are going to college and if they're going to be living. So it's like, it's just kind of like, how do you really even plan? And I think for me, it's just staying open and not putting too many restrictions around what that could look like in dating.
I mean, the inherent experience of like going out. I went out to dinner.
Ooh, where'd you go?
Where do you think?
June's.
First guess. She's right.
Date? Hesitation.
No.
A lady.
No.
No?
It was a friendly business meeting. Like,
what does that mean?
Like, we had known each other for a long time, and decided to just like talk shop for a hard couple hours.
Okay.
Which was really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, great fucking conversation. And
it didn't end in sex.
It did not. And the June's experience was, from a culinary perspective, great. Like, super consistent. Everything that I would expect from there. Like, it was like fucking nothing had ever happened, right? And then from every other part of the experience was like, man, I feel weird being here. Like the mask and the glove thing was noticeable. It being an empty restaurant was noticeable. And
did you keep your masks? Oh, because they're wearing masks and gloves.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really hard to, like, you can't blame a restaurant operator or general managers or owners about like we got to do that shit, and it's this really weird gray area of basically this person by person basis of how comfortable are you willing to feel or how uncomfortable are you willing to feel, and what risk are you willing to take. And
it's certainly not a sexy setting, so we can start there.
No, but it's I think the thing that it reminded me of at the end of the day is how much I miss sitting down, sharing food, and connecting with other human beings, regardless of the context or whatever that is. Yeah. That to me is something that is very, very, very appealing. And I miss that. What I also realized simultaneously is that I'm now super open-minded, even more open-minded than I ever have been in the world, to discover new ways of doing that.
Yeah, I don't feel limited to restaurants to explore that. And I see what you're saying, because I did go to a restaurant this weekend, and I felt uncomfortable. I don't want to say where I was. It wasn't even in a state. That's probably part of the reason I had all these prejudices around it.
I was like, Texas Roadhouse, wasn't it?
I was like, if I was going to go to a restaurant for the first time, I would have liked to have been at this one where I'd feel more comfortable, and I know this and that and all the other bullshit that comes with my thinking. And I wasn't in that. And they were like, sir, can we get you something? And I was like, great. I hate my life.
Yeah. What the fuck am I doing here?
But it was sort of this moment of like, I would feel so much better just being home with my family right now, cooking dinner and having a conversation and not having to ask for the salt and pepper, or, oh, you can't bring me the ketchup and you can't do this because of that. And like,
it really has shined a light on that, right?
Reminding you of how abnormal or how safe they're having to be because of this thing that no one wants to talk about, which is this elephant in the room.
Totally.
So yeah, it just takes away any sort of fun or intimacy, gathering, connection, it's like, all of it.
It's constant. Like, I found myself constantly examining the nuts and bolts of how they were having to operate because of all this, right? And like part of that is just like me like loving inside baseball shit, right?
Yeah.
But part of it is just something that inherently on some level everyone's going to fucking look at because it's so different, right?
Do you think it's going to go back? Like, what are you hearing? Because you're in the know.
I think that the prevailing knowledge is that we're going to have to work through this for a while.
With masks.
With masks, and our best case scenario is masks and another round of this, but not having to drop occupancy and just kind of treading water for a long time. That's the best case scenario. And then the worst case scenario is any number of degrees that you want to speculate from there, right? On a lighter note,
please.
So, two of the TV shows that we watched the most when we were dating was Succession, which I turned you on to, and Big Mouth, which we discovered together, which I believe Faith turned us on to, right?
No, I think you had mentioned it to me. You had discovered it one night. You're like, we have to watch this. And so when you came over, and then all those kids came over.
Oh, that's fucking right. Fuck. That was amazing.
It was amazing.
All those really high kids.
We were all high, basically.
There's something to be said about just being in a room with really stoned 16-year-olds and just knowing that they're stoned and them knowing that you probably know that they're stoned, but we're all not going to say anything.
Like, I'm also going to say what's not being said is that we just had like the craziest sex.
Yeah, it's fucking wild, dude.
And didn't know they were coming home.
Yeah.
And they came home. And
yeah,
I
right
was
after
like,
we came.
Everybody had come.
Yeah.
And I was like out of my mind. Out of my fucking
Totally.
mind. And then we put on Big Mouth. And half of her friends were mortified that adults were watching that. And the other half were like, you're the coolest parents we've ever met.
Yeah. Literally so mortified that they went to the other side of the house.
In the other room. Yeah, not even in our, like, didn't want to hear it, didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, the less of you that are in here, the better for me too.
Yeah.
Love that show. I'm only like on season 2 though.
You really need to power through it.
Yeah.
I know you heard this thing that like season 2 and season 3 aren't as good. I think they're all on the same level.
I heard that about
I ride for all of them.
Riverdale. Seasons 1 and 4, but 2 and 3 not so great. I just heard that this weekend from Faith.
Riverdale.
I didn't know that about Big Mouth.
Well, God bless. I remember that specifically. I think the remark was it just gets a little crude, which it certainly does get a little bit more like, but I think that's also in our wheelhouse.
It's always difficult for me when someone is selling me on something and they're like, it's you just wait it out until season 5.
It's like,
and I'm like, I have to spend how many hours of my life waiting something out to get good?
You gotta like. If I'm not hooked in 3 episodes, you've failed.
Better Call Saul, you've like really committed to that. Knowing it, you weren't enjoying it that much until like another season.
I have to say that I blame myself as a viewer. I think my taste in television hadn't evolved to understand how brilliant that show was.
I almost referenced it, but it's like me in a relationship. I'm like, oh God, this season 2 and 3 is terrible, but 5 and 6 have been really good.
Seasons 1, 5, and 6.
Like, what am I doing during these other
seasons of love?
Okay,
so the questions I had for you, and this is we'll kind of wrap up here with like a lightning round situation. So I think we both enjoy specifically the characters on these 2 shows.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you on Succession, which character do you view yourself the most similar to? Or if you were to be in that world, who do you think you would be in that world?
It's so hard, number one, because on so many levels you're like, I relate to all of them in some way. But then on the other hand, I'm like, I can't relate to these people on any level. I do not like understand that life of money and wealth and power.
Yeah.
Now, all that being said, I feel like I'd be a Greg. Because I don't understand it and I don't power play.
Yeah.
And I would just...
For the record, Greg does start to power play.
He starts to once he gets in, but him getting in is like foot and mouth, super awkward.
Or in his case, throw up in bear helmet.
Totally.
Is it a bear? I don't know.
I don't know. But just watching him navigate that is so awkward. And I'm like, that's totally what I would be like in those situations. I would love to say I'd be like Shiv, but I just am not that... I'm not like her at all. And then for a second I was like, would I be like a Logan?
Yeah.
building my dynasty and keeping my kids all around dependent upon me. And
but also being a complete fucking sociopath to your fucking children.
yeah, that's when I was like, I can't even pretend that I would be anywhere near that.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not a Kendall.
No, God, I don't even know where to start there.
No. So yeah.
Also, the rapping scene in the first episode of Kendall.
Totally.
Like, you don't realize how funny it is until you watch, like, the first season, and you go back and watch, you're like, oh, this is fucking precious.
This is the best.
Yeah.
Connor's girlfriend.
Yeah, that's heavy.
That's another one where I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
Similarities?
you know.
Yeah.
I've been doing this writing.
The word girlfriend is a word that evolves in that show, by the way.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
My favorite line still is probably like, do you hyperacant?
Yeah.
Like, Vitamixing the wine. You can take off 10 years in 50 seconds. Or maybe it was 50 years in 10 seconds. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, what about Big Mouth?
Okay, so Jesse probably based on the girl hanging out with all the guys. And
Yeah,
like,
I think that's
completely
very
sexually awkward.
Yeah.
As it like didn't get it, didn't
Yeah.
want to get it, and then ends up dating like the wrong guy.
Yeah.
But I'm always thinking like hormone monster.
Yeah, I think Jessie becomes, when she like finally like embraces her sexuality, it's like there.
Oh, she does
right?
it before 30. Good for her.
Yeah, God bless. Like when her hormone monster really kicks in, it's like, it is fucking golden. Also, the fact that her and Nick end up having the same hormone monster.
What?
Spoiler alert.
Now you're like getting me intrigued. That's compelling. Nice work,
All right.
Paige.
And now you're going to dive into season 2 tonight.
Who are you on Succession? You're all today. After a weekend with my son.
I mean, I would fancy myself a Culkin, but I'm probably Tom.
Wow. That dynamic with Tom and Greg is kind of the best.
Look at us, Tom and Greg.
Our chemistry is amazing. We have the best chemistry.
Yeah,
We confused it in the beginning.
yeah, totally.
And then what about on, I just forgot the name of our
Oh
show.
fuck! What's Jason Mantzoukas' character again? The little fucking Latino kid.
What season is he on?
He's on the whole thing.
Jay?
Jay, I'm totally Jay.
That's the one I said that I sleep with. That
Yeah.
I end up dating. It's
Yeah,
the worst
I'm
thing yet.
totally fucking Jay.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Look at us. Yeah.
Yeah,
I need to keep
mostly because I fuck my bath mat.
his little baby pillow. As a baby with the pillow.
Totally good.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Which also Succession has. Oh, it's not a pillow scene. What is it? He gives him the contract in the bathroom and he like stuffs it into the toilet and
Yeah.
tries to flush it.
Oh, yeah, the bathroom freakout scene is also amazing. Yeah, well, good shit.
It's all very good.
Thank you.